Good morning, metalheads of the internet, and welcome to what I hope will be a sobering episode of the Metal Meltdown because I am tired, hungover, arguably perhaps still a little drunk from an entire weekend of partying extra hard. Saturday night, after work, went to a bar with some cool people, stayed out until 4 a.m., not a great idea. Had about 4 hours of fucking sleep. Also not great. Spent the entirety of Sunday at the St. Patrick's Day Parade in Toronto. Then had a bunch more drinks at a place called the Loose Moose. Ate a bunch of shitty food. Not a great idea either. Came home, had another couple drinks. Also not a great idea. Slept for like 10 fucking hours. Significantly a much better idea, but I think I might have overslept because I still don't feel great. The point is, Robert does not feel great, but he has Chompy. That helps. He's now talking in third person. That doesn't look so great for him. But, yeah, we persevere. Here we are, talking about a new studio album from Eric Wagner. In the Lonely Light of Mourning is the second solo album from Eric Wagner, a gentleman who over the course of the past 40 years has performed with a slew of respectable bands like Lid, Blackfinger, The Skull, but perhaps most famously was the lead singer for the highly influential American doom metal band Trouble. In 2017, an artist by the name of Eric Wagner releases an album called Bound for the Far Horizon, but truth be told, I'm not so certain that this is the same Eric Wagner that we are talking about. I'm not so sure that this is the same Eric Wagner that played with Trouble and The Skull. I think this might be a different guy altogether, but I have not found any information confirming this. I have not found any information stating otherwise. Therefore, for now, I will assume that Eric Wagner also released a really corny, semi-conservative folk album in 2017. Irregardless of whether or not this is his first or second solo album, this is his final studio album with any project whatsoever. And this is because, unfortunately, late last year, Eric Wagner passed away from COVID-19, which unfortunately also cements In the Lonely Light of Mourning as a posthumous release. And posthumous releases are genuinely difficult to approach because best case scenario, they are unfinished, and worst case scenario, you have record producers and executives coming in trying to kind of replicate the feel and the vibe of the artist in question, but just not really doing so with the best intentions, with the most education and insight. Obviously, we're veering outside the realms of metal right now, but a great example of the latter would be a lot of the material released by Tupac and Michael Jackson following their respective deaths. Michael Jackson, in particular, released an album called Michael in 2010, 2011-ish, and it is without question one of the most heartless, soulless, overproduced records I've ever heard from any genre. The good news here is we're not dealing with the leftovers of a major pop singer, nor are we dealing with a major record company filled with greedy executives like Sony. We are dealing with an Eric Wagner solo album that has been put back together by his friends, his family, his peers, and is being very quietly released by Cruz Music. So while I cannot surely and confidently say that this album is the intended vision of Eric Wagner, that it is in fact a complete work, and his death is, for lack of a better term, irrelevant to the execution of the record, I can say that this does feel more complete than your average posthumous release. This does feel like something that was made with sincere heart, that was made with sincere effort, and was not made to simply cash in on Eric's death. In the Lonely Light of Mourning is a very old school record. The production, the music is very stark, very minimalistic, somewhat bare bones, but I think it is all of these things by design. I think the intention was to make a very straightforward, kind of classic Trouble-esque doom metal record. I found this to be a very, very, very interesting and entertaining listen. The music is very well constructed, it feels very authentic, and Eric's voice, there's just something very endearing about how fragile his voice is. You can tell that maybe he didn't have COVID, but he definitely wasn't in the best of shape during the time this album was being put together. He just consistently sounds somewhat frail and sickly, but he never really lets that get the better of him. He still puts in like a lot of really, really honest and powerful performances. Ironically, I'd go as far as to argue that this is the best Eric has sounded on any album in some time. He absolutely dazzles, especially on very somber and melancholic and depressing cuts like If You Lost It All and the album's title track In the Lonely Light of Mourning. The latter of which is unintentionally perhaps, but nonetheless, one of the most poignant cuts on the entire record, not just because of the truly harrowing doom or Eric's really strong voice, but also because of some of the lyrics, as he writes in the end here, "Lying here upon my pillow at the end of my days, here beneath my window I can hear them pray." There are some other kind of unintentionally poignant numbers on the record, like the opening track, Rest in Peace, and the closing track, Wish You Well, but these have a little bit more pep and doom metal rage in them, shall I say. I'm reminded of some of the really old school doom of Demon and Black Sabbath, but, you know, despite that, this does not feel far off from what I think Trouble might have recorded back in the late 80s. Musically, though, I think my favorite cut on the record might be Isolation, simply because it is filled, practically overflowing with deliciously groovy riffs and just some really great fucking vocals. It is sweet, savory, salty American doom metal goodness. This is by no means a groundbreaking or revolutionary record by the standards of doom metal. It is arguably, as I sometimes say on the Metal Meltdown, a very meat and potatoes record, but this is meat and potatoes cooked with genuine love, hospitality, and warmth. Like, the people who continued to work on this following Eric's death clearly cared very much about Eric as a human being, as a musician, as a friend, perhaps as a loved one. And that shines very much through the record. It feels complete. It feels genuine. I would feel very comfortable saying this is one of the better Posthumous records I've heard in general. I would give this an enthusiastic 3.5 out of 5. If you love Trouble, if you love The Skull, if you love a lot of what Eric has done, if you love bands like Pentagram, Saint Vitus, and a lot of the other classic doom bands that we've mentioned, I think you'll dig this. If you're unfamiliar with doom metal and looking for a decent entry point, I'd probably still recommend some of those other bands, or even Black Sabbath, to be honest. But hey, this makes a solid entry point as well. You know, it's definitely got that classic doom vibe, duh. It's well written, very well performed. I don't really have any major complaints or nitpicks whatsoever. I just really enjoyed the record. I found it to be a very entertaining and simultaneously endearing record, and I think, or at least I hope, that Eric would be proud of how this record turned out. 3.5 out of 5, a genuinely really good record, and a really solid way of saying farewell to a true doom metal legend. Rest in peace, Eric. You've earned it. And that is it for the Metal Meltdown. I'm not an expert, nor do I claim to be. Let me know. And that is it for the Metal Meltdown. I'm not an expert, nor do I claim to be. So what do you think? Did you like this record? Did you not like this record? What do you want to hear from me next? Press this button to subscribe. Me and Chompy are probably going to go outside. I think we need the fresh air. Especially me, because I've been stroking this alligator plush the whole time, which I'm only now realizing. Yeah, time to go outside. So, yeah. Goodbye!